Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Rune from Rune'sGuild, and this is another episode of RPG Horror Stories. In today's episode, we will be reading the story of a Blob, apparently. It's just titled The Mini Trials of Blob, Part 1, Fresh Meat. I did look, there's like 7 parts to the story, so there's a bit too much for one video. So I'll probably do one in each part here. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, so I guess I'll go ahead and roll the post. In this tale, I decided to play a villainous blob monster in a superhero RP server on Discord, only to discover that the server was full of lunatics who wanted to hunt my character for sport. Rather than just one problem player, there was an entire cast of them, who I encountered over the 2 to 3 months I lasted there. Since this is going to be such a long one, I split it up into a few parts. Some background. I'm a long-time text RPer and have gotten my start in superhero MMO Fair-like City of Heroes, rest in peace, and Champions Online. A few years ago, I was looking for a new superhero RP community to join. After some browsing around on Discord, I found a server that looked promising, an original freeform superhero text RP room with a few hundred members. I noticed right away that many of the players in the server seemed to be quite young, likely in their teens judging by the kinds of things they were talking about, whereas I was in my early 30s. This made me a bit wary of getting involved, but it was either this or a slew of hentai servers, which were very much not my thing. So I decided to risk it and joined up with the intention of trying to be a good role model. I mention this because I think the age of many of the other members in the server explains some, but not all, of the way people behaved there. It's also a big part of why I stuck it out as long as I did, as I was trying my damnedest to be patient with them. Looking around a bit, I noticed that there was a shortage of villains. That was perfect, as I love playing villains. I decided to create a sewer-dwelling ooze monster who I thought could be a fun, shadowy antagonist for the heroic players to work against. He was paranoid, obsessive, and highly intelligent, who simultaneously loathed humanity and longed to be closer to it. I made him just barely sympathetic enough that a redemption arc might be in the cards if other player characters befriended him, but he was initially quite repulsive and deranged, stalking and abducting random people he became obsessed with. Think the kind of Batman villain who would end up in Arkham Asylum rather than the Blackgate Penitentiary. I will call him Blob. One thing to know about the room is that while it was freeform RP, it had an extremely strict approval process for player characters. Anything a player wanted to use in the room, from powers to NPCs to a character species, had to be reviewed by the moderators in meticulous detail, and be approved by at least 2 of them. Characters were supposed to be around Avenger level at most. The mods wanted precise statistics for everything, from how much weight your character could lift to how much damage they could withstand, which was measured in tons. For some reason, I still don't entirely understand how that works. As you'll see later, this didn't actually result in characters being balanced, and instead led to a strange form of power gaming. But at the time, I took it as a challenge to really work out the nitty-gritty details of how Blob's powers would function. Though physically formidable and extremely difficult to put down for good, he would prefer to keep to the shadows if confronted, and use the Undercity environment to his advantage. I made sure to give him a few key weaknesses that other player characters could exploit, and decided that he wouldn't have any ranged or elemental attacks so as to keep him reined in. As a signature move, I gave him a sonic attack, a cacophony of disorienting whispers that could cause intense vertigo. The mods approved his character sheet. The first big red flag happened once Blob sheet was published. The room insisted on having every character sheet be fully public for the entire server, visible to both moderators and every other player, with no character secrets allowed. I figured that this would be fine and I could trust other players not to metagame too much. Nope. Instead, the instant Blob sheet went public, before I'd had a chance to even introduce him to the roleplay, other players started pouring over and metagaming plans to kill him. A number of people suddenly and suspiciously mentioned that their characters were trained in slaying the specific category of creatures he belonged to, Eldritch Horrors. Well, he is a monster, I thought, so fair enough, but it didn't exactly leave me a great impression. This is where the first problem player, who I'll call Gunslinger, comes in. When I first joined the server, Gunslinger was in the middle of an argument with the mods because one of his characters, an ice-based villain, had instantly frozen an entire city solid by generating ice at Mach 5. This was retconned, but established a trend of Gunslinger being something of an RP power gamer. He would regularly exploit the room's rules in cheesy ways, breaking what little system the freeform RP had. For example, the room had server bots that allowed you to type in a command that had your character work in order to gain a little money, which you could spend to buy things for your character, bypassing the normal review process. Gunslinger had been aggressively spamming this feature, and had used his earnings to purchase, among other things, an army of elite commandos and an extra-dimensional fortress. Once during an event in which a bunch of random terrorists attacked Central Park, as other players gathered their heroes to fight them, Gunslinger simply opened a portal to his fortress and unleashed his army, ending the entire event in one post. Apparently no one had a problem with this. I introduced Bob with a solo post in which he attacked a detective NPC in the Undercity. At this point, the only thing anyone canonically knew about Bob was that there had been a few disappearances in the sewers. It had not been revealed what Blob was, or even that he existed at all. Nonetheless, Gunslinger followed up on investigating the detective's disappearance by sending in his holy demon hunter, who he assured me was specialized in finding and slaying eldritch horrors, because of course. As Gunslinger made his way down the unlit, poorly maintained Undercity corridor, I had the monster manifest in the distance, shaping part of his mass into a vaguely humanoid silhouette and asking, "Who goes there?" I figured I'd keep my distance, sticking mostly to talking, and maybe get a chance to taunt the silly holy man for his foolish piety. Nah, Gunslinger just attacked me immediately without answering. Okay, sure. Gunslinger, of course, had a cheesy build. And the first thing he did was hit Blob with a curse of weakness that sapped 90% of Blob's strength for several minutes, meaning all I could really do during the fight was run away. Seeing as my ooze monster had been promptly reduced to an ornery liquid, a little lame, but I figured that he could lure the Gunslinger deeper into the Undercity and then ambush him once Blob's strength returned. During the fight, the server owner showed up with her archer character, and the two of them took shots at the big red eyeballs I'd given Bob as an obvious weakness. Temporarily blinding him, Gunslinger naturally had enchanted guns with infinite ammo to get around the server's restrictions on unrealistic depictions of firearms. The two of them chose to return to the surface rather than pursuing Blob deeper, and we all lived to see another day. I was feeling a little odd about things at this point. Gunslinger and his friends were continuing to plot and metagame out of character how to kill Blob, despite the fact that no one in character had tied him to the disappearances. In fact, no one was actually looking into the disappearances at all, just planning their next hunt. Now, I don't want to give some impression that I was upset that people were trying to kill my character. Blob was a villain, after all, and one I'd intentionally designed to be creepy and monstrous, but still, it felt like he had a target on his back way before he'd actually earned it. I began noticing that the server seemed to have a weird bias against villains. It was baked right into the rules. PvP was allowed, but like in many RP servers, there were restrictions on killing another player's character without getting permission from that character's player first. However, this server had a caveat to that rule. You were allowed to kill another PC if your character had a good reason to kill them. And, in practice, reason to kill meant that the character had committed any crime. In other words, it was open season if a hero wanted to kill a villain, but not the other way around. I brought this up to the room owners, but they thought the rule was fine as it was. So now, I had a bunch of metagaming heroes out for my character's blood who were legally allowed to kill my character whenever they wanted, but my pseudopods were tied if I wanted to retaliate. Then there was the global police force. One thing to note about the room's lore is that there were no major setting supervillains or enemy factions whatsoever. No equivalent of Hydra or Thanos or the Legion of Doom, no invading aliens or armies of demons, nothing beyond a handful of player villains or enemy NPCs that would be invented on the fly for a scene. Nonetheless, the setting had a massive and overpowering, well-equipped standing army of global peacekeepers dedicated to taking down superhuman threats. The rank-and-file soldiers of the global police force were equipped with numerous superpower nullification devices, including ones built right into their body armor, so a supervillain couldn't so much as touch them without being reduced to a normal villain. They also had robotic enforcers ranging from armored drones all the way up to colossal walking weapon platforms, and their numbers were apparently so vast that it was explicitly stated that even if a supervillain somehow could take a few of them down, they'd just keep sending in reinforcements until the ne'er-do-well was dead. This dystopian nightmare was depicted as a good thing. I, at one point, briefly brought in another character of mine, a roguish metahuman with authority issues. He began snooping around a crime scene and encountered an NPC cop played by the mod who ran the global police force. The cop was just a beat cop, not part of the GPF, and my rogue got a bit mouthy at him, as he's not the type to show cops much respect. The mod immediately began narrating at me that my character would know better than to get into an altercation with a law enforcer, because that would mean the global police force would show up and kill him, no matter how powerful he was. Yes, a server mod was threatening to straight up kill one of my characters for daring to get a little uppity at a police officer. I didn't bring my rogue around to the server after that. Meanwhile, Blob's paranoia was starting to look increasingly reasonable. There isn't much of a resolution to my interaction with the gunslinger. He and his friends just got bored with trying to kill Blob and moved on to doing other things in the server. I don't think he was malicious, just hyperactive and constantly looking for ways to exploit the game. Compared to what would happen later, he barely even counted as a problem player. The owners eventually decided to make Gunslinger a moderator for some reason, despite the fact that his antics had previously gotten him into regular trouble with them before, so that was great. Well, I guess, that wasn't too bad to start off with. Could have been worse. I mean, obviously, power gaming, metagaming, etc., is just, it's all annoying. But so far, it's not that bad. The global police force seems a little nuts. It seems like it's kind of pointless to have any sort of event on that server involving, like, supervillains or anything like that, because, like, if there's just the overlying idea that if things get too bad, oh, here comes the GPF, they're gonna save the day, instantly, or, like, where's the GPF when you need them kind of thing, like, let's say, some super powerful Omega villain with the power to, just instantly kill anybody they want to shows up, like, why would the global police force not stop that ahead of time, if they have power nullification? It just, I don't know. Just to me, adding those makes it seem kind of pointless to have any sort of event that they couldn't handle. On top of that, big red flag is having to post your character sheet just, like, in public for anybody to see. To me, that just, it's sort of like, I don't know, you're asking for people to metagame and cheat. On top of that, having to meticulously list all those different things only for it to apparently not matter most of the time is just sort of silly. Like, oh, my character's resistant to 20,000 tons of bullets. It's kind of weird. 20,000 tons of damage. But then, Gunslinger comes along and, one-shots you because he happens to have a bullet that does 20,001 tons of damage because, it's fair and realistic. It's an enchantment. It's totally fair. Also, using money to bypass, like, review, that's fine, I guess, but at the same time, it should be more of a shop thing, it should be like you can get the money and then spend it on a server shop that already has things that are fair and balanced added to it, as opposed to, oh, I earned, $20,000 using the moneymaker tool, I would spend all 20,000 of that to get, a button that just eliminates every villain's superpower forever, and then oh, okay, well, that's fair enough, you can do that then. It just seems a little silly to me. There are more parts to this. This is just part one. I'm not entirely sure how many parts there are, but there are more. And I don't really have anything else to say on it, to be honest. It's pretty, fairly put what's wrong here and what's not wrong here. And I guess you can have different opinions too, but so far it seems like it's okay. It just seems more leaning towards the idea that, like, oh, supervillains will always lose and superheroes will always win. And, like, I guess that's fair to keep the, like, the hero aspect of it there. But again, it just feels like there's not much of a point to play a villain if you can just automatically get killed by anybody who seems to think that you're committing crimes. OP said that they were trying to hint that it was Blob who was taking the people who, like, causing the disappearances, but then everybody just sort of automatically knew instead of investigating. I guess, to be fair, if I were to be a superhero vigilante and I happen to wander into the sewers and I saw in the distance a strange amorphous shape make a humanoid silhouette, I'd probably start shooting too. But that doesn't really, I don't know, I guess I feel if you're investigating the missing people, and especially if you're as overpowered as Gunslingers apparently, like, you wouldn't shoot first, you would interrogate and then shoot. Kill the thing after you ask it a few questions, I guess. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. But yeah, that's probably it for this video. If you liked, leave a like, subscribe. If you didn't like it, let me know. I'll try to do better. As far as, comments go, if you can't think of anything that you want to say on your own, just tell me about a time that you had, you saw or had an overpowered character of your own, or, like, saw somebody else with an overpowered character and, like, what they did with it. Yeah, go ahead and subscribe. Stick around for the next part. I think there's like 7. I'll try to condense some of them if they're a little bit shorter. But yeah, that is about all I have for this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.